Welcome, Peter.
Hi,
How,
Anshul. Thanks for having me.
how are you doing? And thanks for joining and collaborating with Next Gen Digital.
Yeah,
And
well, very exciting.
so I know we are going to talk about a lot of things here. And I think the best way to start over here is Peter, if you can take a few minutes and talk about yourself, how did you start this channel? What does your channel do? And I know, personally speaking, I'm a great follower of your channel and I know quite a bit about you. But just for the benefit of my viewers, if you can just give a quick introduction, please.
Sure, yeah. So, hello, folks. My name is Peter Akis, and I like to think of myself as a productivity teacher these days. That's the main label. We all have a lot of labels that we do. So, I have a background as a consultant in economic consulting, which is where you work for really big law firms that are involved in massive litigation. That's what I started doing after I graduated college. And after a couple of years of doing that, I totally burned out. And I thought, you know what, spending 40, 50, 60 hours a week in an office working for other people is not for me. And I decided I wanted to start my own business. Didn't really know what I was doing. I was also in the middle of burnout. So for a couple of years, I was just trying to get through the day really. And at some point I started blogging a little bit. And one day I blogged about an app that I was using at the time, OmniFocus, a task manager. And I put a little bit more effort into this blog post and the other blog posts. And then I published it and nothing happened. Kept blogging about some other random topics. And 6 months later, all of a sudden, I found that Google searches were driving quite a bit of traffic to my blog post where I described how to use OmniFocus. And I was like, oh, look at that. Nobody was reading my blog before. Now some people are reading my blog. And that traffic, increased. More and more people came to read it. And then some people would leave a comment on my blog post like, oh, this was so useful. And at some point, someone commented and said, Peter, you should really charge for this knowledge. Like, it's really valuable. And then I thought, that's an excellent idea. And so then I decided to record a video course teaching people how to use OmniFocus to be more productive. And that course ended up doing pretty well. And I ended up creating two other courses. This was less than 2 years ago, and in that time I created two other courses. So I've got 3 courses now, and that's how I make a living. So my YouTube channel is sort of a teaser, if you will, for my courses, and also just a way for me to to help people out at a larger scale than I could do with my courses.
Great. That's a great introduction. But thanks for taking out time, Peter. And so how long was it when you started this blogging or YouTube channel?
I would say it was 2 years ago. So right about the time,
Yes,
less than
okay.
2 years ago, because we're speaking in December of 2020, and it was in March, I want to say 2019, yes, that I created my first course. And it was really after I did the course that I started posting serious videos on my YouTube channel, not just
Okay.
me randomly talking about something. So it's pretty recent.
Oh, okay. That's great. Yeah, the amount of success you have got in the last couple of years is amazing. And because I keep reading your newsletters and seeing your videos, and I don't think I have read any of your blogs. Are you still writing those? Or?
So my newsletter, I send a weekly article to everyone on my email list, and that's
Yep.
just an article that I publish on my blog as well.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not like I used to, because at one point I did 365 days in a row publishing one blog post every day, which was intense, but I learned a lot from it. But it's right now it's once a week, which takes much less time than once a day.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Peter, coming back to our discussion, one thing which actually I've gone through it in the last about 7 months or last couple of years since the time I got interested in all you productivity teachers or gurus or YouTubers or brand makers, whatever you may call on yourself. One thing is there are different definitions or concepts on productivities which we keep hearing, especially our viewers, right? And we talk about forget about all the apps and everything, right? We have Evernote and Rome Research and Obsidian and Things3 and OmniFocus. There are plethora of apps available over there. I just wanted to get your perspective on, I do understand there has to be a workflow, But what is your thought process? I wanted to pick your brains on that and see, especially on the productivity side, what does productivity mean to you, number one? And number two, what kind of workflow you work on a day-to-day basis, which makes you more productive and lead a stress-free life, and then you take it from there.
Yeah, and those are great questions, and I really appreciate that you start there, because a lot of times people will jump into talking about how to be more productive without defining what that means, and so that's so tricky because if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, right? If you're not clear on the definition of what that means for you, like, are you very likely to achieve it? I don't think so. So for me, we can think of productivity on several levels. One level is very simple, day-to-day stuff. So you've got responsibilities, you've got commitments. Maybe you're a doctor, and so one of your responsibilities is like following up with patients, right? So a patient came in and now you need to send them something afterwards, and are you doing that stuff? Or it could just be making sure that your house stays tidy, right? It could be all sorts of things, really. Do volunteer work, making sure you're showing up there. So honoring your commitments is one way that I think of productivity. When you take a step back, really, so sort of on a higher level, you can think of productivity as really to do with achieving your goals. So we all have goals in life, and many different kinds of goals. It could be like, I would like to live in France for a couple of years. It could be like, I want to lose a lot of weight, or I want to quit smoking, or whatever. It could be habit goals. Or it could just be like, I would like to speak at conventions of some kind, like speak in front of a lot of people. And are you achieving those things? So for me, there's a distinction between sort of the day-to-day productivity and like the, what I call big picture productivity is like,
Sure.
Are you really achieving the goals that you have in your life, or are you always stuck on that day-to-day level?
No, makes a lot of sense. And so you have goals, and like you mentioned, like any of us, right? We have goals, we write it down, we create a to-do list and all those things. And then we start using these apps, different apps, right? And I know I was talking to one of my student, and he said, which app will you recommend? I said, I will not recommend you any of these apps. What I will recommend you, what works for you, how. So I wanted to understand what are his challenges? How does he work? He can work with Evernote also. He can work with Things3 or any of these apps. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I absolutely know that you are a big follower of Things3 as well as OmniFocus. Mm-hmm. If you can just talk about Things3, and how do you manage your workflow, or you can even share your screen if you want to, and show how do you manage your day-to-day projects. So because I know you speak at different conventions also, and you have courses, you talk to your clients and all those things. How do you manage your typical day or a week accordingly?
Sure. Yeah. Let me explain a little bit first, and then I'll actually pull up my things, because I think that would be nice to show people also.
Sure.
So the way that I think about it is asking the why. Okay. So getting really clear on what it is that you want to achieve and why, and then finding apps that support you in sort of going through the chain of reasoning and getting things done. So for example, I am a part of a Toastmasters club. Toastmasters, right? A big international organization where people work on their public speaking and their leadership skills, and they have local clubs, and I'm the president of our local club right now. So sometimes I'm giving a speech in my club. I also have a lot of ongoing responsibilities as president. I open the meeting, when the meeting closes, I tell everybody, hey, the next meeting is on this date, stuff like that. Or maybe I'll welcome new members. And so I want to make sure that I'm keeping track of these things. Why do I want to do that? I want to do that because I want to fulfill my duties as president. Okay. So I kind of think of my life in terms of buckets, in terms of areas, right? And which hats am I wearing? So there's Peter, the Toastmaster, and he's trying to fulfill his Toastmaster duties. There's also Peter, the course creator. And so I have to, for example, I don't have to, but I like to support my students, right? So if someone takes my course, they've got a question, they email me, I respond. Then there's Peter, the person who's recently started weightlifting. So I have my responsibilities to show up at the gym, And so I like to start by organizing my life into areas and then asking myself, what are all the things that I'm trying to achieve in this area? So if you like, I can open up my Things 3 a little bit and show people how
Sure.
I've got that set up. You're going to have to give me permission to share my screen. There we go.
Yep.
Getting a beautiful view of my dark mode Things 3 right now.
I know.
So basically, I like Things 3 a lot. Another app I used to use, like I said, was OmniFocus. And these apps are quite particular. They're task managers, but they think about tasks in a specific way that not all task managers do. And the reason I like Things 3 is because, first of all, it does that thing that I was talking about before, where I can organize my life into areas. If I collapse the areas here, you can kind of see them. So I actually have a Toastmasters area here, trips. Not so many trips going on these days, as you might understand. Hopefully 2021, go back to going on trips.
Yeah.
Course development, I have a community for my students, I have support. Of course, I have admin stuff like everybody else, home health. And so let's go, for example, to my marketing and sales area, because I market my courses. And so within that, I've got projects. And so one is actually the interview with you. There's a project for that.
Wow.
That's fun. That one's pretty simple. I already did a couple things preparing for the video, but once we're done, I'm going to be sharing this video with my audience as well. And so I've already created a task for that.
Yep.
And there's kind of this units of thinking that's like my life is divided into areas. In each area, I have projects. So another project is I'm writing an email that goes out on Sunday. So I've got a project for that, and it has a bunch of steps. Decide on the topic, write the article, proofread the article, add it to my email app, send it out. And as I'm working through those, I'm just checking those off. And at some point, they'll all be checked off. I check off the whole project. I won't do it now. And then it's gone. And so by thinking of your life in terms of areas and projects this way, you really can get a lot of clarity on what it is you need to do. And you can also see that I've got them all lined up really nicely right here in the sidebar. And then there's the matter of when am I going to do stuff. So things as a nice today view, which is cool. And this is just the things that I'm intending to work on today. It's later in the day for me now. So you see that my today view is nice and empty, which is good. This is one more thing that I want to do today. Yeah. But so one thing I could do is I could say, you know what, I actually want to write this article for Sunday. I want to write it today already. So I can select these first two tasks out of this project, right click when, and say today. Yep. Now look at a star, and that means that I'm planning to work on them today. It'll also show that I have 5 days left. So one of the things I love about Things is it distinguishes between the intent date, it's called the when date, when you're planning to work on something, and when it's due. So for people who have a lot of deadlines, maybe you're doing client projects and people ask you to have things done by certain times, you really want to find a task manager that lets you set due dates or deadlines, right? Just to remind you. So I can go to my upcoming view and actually, there's a weird graphical bug here, where I can see what's coming up in the next couple of days. And it shows me my calendar events as well as tasks that have due dates at certain dates. So for example, tomorrow, I have a lifting session with my personal trainer, grocery delivery, daily Turkish lesson. I'm studying Turkish every day now. And I also want to recycle some old electronics and take them to the grocery store where they'll recycle them. Thursday, I got dinner with my parents. And Thursday is the last day that I need to cancel an account for a certain app that I used. And so this is a super nice way for me to be able to anticipate what's coming up. So this just totally organizes my life.
Great. No, this is really nice. And I'm using Things 3, like I mentioned, for the last year or so. I use it exactly the same way. And there are so many automations and integrations available within it. So I love it. I simply love it. Maybe at some point of time, I'll do my workflow video on Things.
You should. You totally should. Yeah.
One thing which came up while you were showing this, how do you or what do you use for note-taking?
For note-taking. So I use Bear, which is a notes app, which I like, and it's fairly basic. So the thing is, I don't find myself taking a ton of notes. And I get this question a lot from my students. It's like, oh, Peter, can you create a course on note-taking? Maybe I will at some point, but for now, that's just not something I do very much. I mean, I store things in my notes, I have a certain color palette that I use in my design, in my marketing and whatever. So I've got the color palette in my notes app, But I can imagine other people that have, way more intense use cases. Like, let's say you are an academic researcher and you're working on a new paper, you're doing some research, and as background reading, you have to read 30 other papers and compile notes on them because you're going to be referencing them in your literature review. Then you've got a really serious note-taking need. And so for something like that, I probably would not recommend Bear, which is a very lightweight app. Then you're thinking more of something like Evernote, which can really handle a lot, or even an app like DevonThink, which is like super intense, storing everything app. Yeah. But for me, very simple.
Okay. Now, I think I should get into your one of the most famous courses. That's what I feel is the big, is the big picture productivity. So what I wanted to ask you is, and I want to understand that too, is number one, what does it do for a person who's taking this course, number one? Number two is, like, I've gone through the contents of that course anyways, and if you wish, you can share that also over here. What are the different contents within that course? And where do you see is the differentiator, or where does the magic happen for a person who takes this course? So talk about it.
Yeah, and so this has to do with what I was mentioning earlier with that distinction between your day-to-day productivity and what I'm calling big picture productivity. Different way to say that is like, are you achieving your goals? So many of my students tell me that, Peter, I loved your course on OmniFocus. I loved your course on things. I feel super on top of my day-to-day stuff. And I'm always like, that's great. That's what we were intending to do. I'm so happy that you got this result. And also just people who are not literally my students, but just like watch my YouTube videos, have questions. They'll say, okay, but I feel like I'm not really making any progress in life. I just keep doing the same things. I have all these big dreams. I'm not really moving towards them. And so I created this course titled Big Picture Productivity to give people a framework, like a workflow, to consistently make progress towards their goals. So to consistently, sort of keep an eye on the big picture. And that really revolves around asking why a lot. And so it's not just saying, here's all my list of tasks. I will randomly pick 5 that I'll work on today. But it's like, no, why are you working on these today? Or why are you working on these tasks this week? And even at the level of like a quarter of the year, 3 months, what are you going to work on in the coming 3 months and why? And that's really the premise of it. It's quite simple, but of course, putting it in workflow form takes a little bit of time, takes some time for people to get used to. But once you can consistently do that, make plans for the future, and execute on your plan, more or less, right? That's really when you start seeing big progress. So that's what I want people to achieve.
Okay. So what's the duration of that course? Like if someone signs up, let's say today, how much time he or she will be taking to complete that course?
So I initially created this as a self-paced course, but I have actually retired the self-paced version of it, and it's now running as a live program. And the reason for that is this. I noticed when a bunch of my students started going through the self-paced version of the course, a lot of people were getting stuck. And I talked to a lot of my course creator friends. Apparently this is pretty common. People have amazing intentions. They enroll in your course. They really want to make a difference in their life. But for some reason or another, they just don't actually go through the course. They got busy, they're working on someone else's course, or they forgot about it or whatever. And so you end up with a lot of students that don't get results simply because they didn't, do the work.
True, very true. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of sad. Like obviously I'm doing this to make a living, but I also actually care about getting my students good outcomes. And Absolutely. So I realized that I had to be more personally involved for people to stay motivated and really do the work. So that's why I reimagined the whole thing as a live program. And the first iteration of the live program will start in January, and it'll be a 5-week thing with 1 or 2 calls a week. And basically similar content, although, it's my second time at this topic. So massively upgraded content, but and I'm basically going to be walking people through it with way more live involvement from me, a lot of calls where people can tell me what, their situation is and get my direct feedback. Because I found that in the end, the human touch just makes a big difference in people's results.
Any day, human touch is so important. Yeah.
Yeah. You also used to do like consulting work, right?
I do. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
still do, yeah.
yeah. Still do it. I don't do it individually. I've been doing it with some organizations in the
Hmm.
manufacturing side or the financial sector, or more on the consulting companies. So I did that, and then I got into this. Then COVID came, so I'm into a lot of things. I have my I write blogs, and
Yeah.
on Medium I write. I'm sure you must have heard about that, the
Oh,
Medium
yeah, yeah, yeah,
platform. And
yeah.
then I just launched my own website just for blogs and consulting.
Hmm.
So I'll share the link with you, or maybe I'll
Yeah,
share
please
the
do.
link. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. No, but so you're aware, like that, if you're as a consultant, if you just write a report and you just throw it in someone's desk,
All right.
nothing's
Yeah.
going to change, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And you're absolutely right, Peter. It's not about that someone has purchased your course for whatever price. But the issue comes when he or she is not using it, not purposely, but maybe
right.
they have started procrastinating, some other priorities come, some different goals
Yeah.
comes in their lives and all those things. But I think this one-on-one thing will definitely work for you.
Yeah, so the program will be a group setting, but
Yeah.
in the group setting, like if you're on a call with a bunch of people, it's gonna be like a Zoom call, someone
Yeah.
can say, listen, you talked about this, that was interesting, that was helpful, but my situation is a little bit different. How would you recommend that
Yeah.
I handle it that's so
Right.
much more powerful than someone going through a pre-recorded video and they have that question and then they just get stuck. And some people literally tell me, I've been stuck for 3 weeks now, I just don't know what to do with this particular exercise. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, makes me
Yeah.
sad, but that's the way it is. So I just thought, how can I help people more? you know
Yeah, yeah. No, great. Thank you so much. This big picture productivity, I'm sure it will be successful. And
Thank you.
you are a great coach. You're a great teacher. I know that I've seen so many of your videos in the last about year or so. So, Peter, before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, and this is for my learning as well as I ask everyone, whomever I interview, I ask this question for sure.
Sure.
We talk about productivity, we talk about reducing procrastination, and we talk
Hmm.
about workflows. Especially this year, 2020, we've started talking about leading a stress free life, right? All these
Yes.
things. Maybe all these things are synonyms, right? So, this entire technology space where there are so many apps, whether you talk about note taking and to-do lists or integration platforms like Zapier and all those things.
Hmm.
So I recently heard about Readwise. I'm not sure if you've heard about that. Readwise,
It
while
sounds
you're
familiar.
yeah, so while you're reading a book or on a Kindle or on a PDF, you highlight something so that highlight
Right.
gets saved into Readwise.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty cool thing. So I wanted to pick your brains and learn from you. Like, where do you see this productivity industry or productivity space going in future, in let's say in the next 12 to 24 months?
I think we're going to see more and more beautifully crafted productivity apps that will do anything you could possibly want them to do.
Mhm.
But what I would encourage people to ask is, should I do this? So just because there is an app that lets you do something doesn't mean that you should be doing that thing. So my approach very much is use apps like be clear, at least towards yourself, why you're doing something. So I use Things 3 because it makes me more reliable, more consistent, because people can trust me basically, right? And because I can trust myself, so it lowers my stress and it makes sure that I
Yeah.
get my stuff done on time. Let's say you have an app like this Readwise thing that you're mentioning. You can highlight things while you're reading on your Kindle or whatever, and I guess all your highlights get collated somewhere on some website so you can peruse them later. Why would you want to do that? And some people, like I said, are going to have excellent reasons for this because you think it's fun, because it helps, because you're doing a lot of research for a book that you're writing or whatever.
Yeah.
I personally don't really have a use case for that, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to bother trying that.
Sure.
I do read every night before going to bed. I've been doing that for as long as I can remember. I always read until my eyes, like, until I start nodding off. And so I do that for fun, even though it's sometimes very serious topics. And just so for me, I see that there are lots of cool new tools out there all the time. Notion is like a big hype, of course, over the past couple of years.
Yep.
Everybody loves talking about it. And if you have a great use case for it, that's great. But think carefully. Are you maybe watching other people's videos on this and thinking, that looks cool, let me try it? Maybe you need to dig a little bit deeper. Be honest with yourself. If you're doing it for fun, you're doing it for fun. But don't kid yourself into thinking that it's making you more productive when it's not.
Right. No, I got it. No, that's a great tip and great insight. So, Peter, I think thanks for your time once again. I really appreciate you taking out time. I know it's like almost 9 p.m. over there in Amsterdam.
Yeah, well, it's a bit later here, and it's so dark, A lot of people don't know this, especially people who live sort of on the American continent. But so I live in the Netherlands, and we're kind of at is it the latitude, the ones that go up and down? Anyway, middle of Canada, And so it gets very dark here in the winter. Like 4:30, it starts getting dark right now, and by 5:30, it's completely dark. And so the days are very short. So thank you very much for having me. It's very, very nice to actually speak to people, because like everybody else, I'm not seeing nearly as many people these days. So.
No, great. Thank you so much. And I'm sure in future we'll get more opportunities for collaborating or just having discussions. Yeah.
That would be fun.